it's Miss Simpson, and it is time for Railroads Day 2. Yesterday, we talked all about how we moved from our cattle industry into our railroads after the Civil War. And this was a big business opportunity for a lot of companies. It kind of took over Texas. Our population was skyrocketing. People were building towns around these railroads. They were using them for travel, transporting goods. They use these railroads all the time. They were a great thing for Texas. But today we are going to talk about how did this kind of impact Native Americans. So I'm going to give you more information than just that. But bear with me for a second. In Texas, not only were the Texans living there, the Americans, but the Native Americans were living there as well. The Native Americans were the first ones to live in this part of the world. So they're still there. They didn't just go away. How do you think that this is impacting our Native American people? We are becoming very populated. They're becoming more industrialized. We have a whole lot more railroads. We have our land is being taken up. We went from 500 miles to over 1,000 or 10,000 miles of railroads, which is a lot of railroads. It's taking up land, time. People are coming. How do you think that impacts the Native Americans with their land, with their the places that they lived? What do you think that this is doing to them? So as I'm teaching you today, and as I am going over this PowerPoint with you, it's just a few slides, I want you to be thinking, how could that impact those Native Americans? So let's talk about farming in Texas. I want you to raise your hand if you've ever driven by a farm, like where they have a ton of things out. I have driven by so much corn. I can't even with you guys. I've seen corn upon cornfields upon cornfields. So Texas farmers back then had to grow more in order to feed the increasing populations of Texas. So remember, there were people coming, immigrants coming, because they were like, oh my gosh, look at what Texas is doing. They've got all these railroads. They're booming. The cities are growing. There's jobs. So in order to do that, the farmers were like, snap, we've got to start planting more. We've got to start growing more in order to make sure everybody has enough food. But the crop prices actually declined, which made it really difficult for the farmers to make a living. So imagine if you were used to be selling corn for $5 and now you're selling corn for $1. That's going to impact how much money you get to keep, because you've got to put some of that money back in to buying seeds or whatever you do to plant the corn. So that has had a big impact on them. So farmers ended up banding together to make a better living. Smart farmers. They formed something called the Grange to help each other. They worked to reform or change farming. That's what they did with the Grange. So then we have the Texas Railroad Commission. This was a commission that made the rules for the railroad to keep things fair. They were like, okay, guys, we have to make sure everything is fair. It's not going to be out of whack. Everybody's following the same rules. But before the commission, railroads were overcharging some businesses and farmers. So that is impacting those farmers even more. So everything is not in balance. Everything is out of whack, out of balance. Crops are really cheap, so the farmers aren't making enough money. But in order to transport those crops on those trains and on those railroads, they were paying prices that were extremely high. So the Texas Railroad Commission was like, we've got to stop this. Farmers, we have to have food. We have to have the railroad. Everything needs to be fair and work in a balance in order for this to work. So they ended up creating the Texas Railroad Commission just to keep everybody in check. All right. So like I told you, it was a few slides, not very long, but I want you to be thinking right now, how could these railroads affect Native Americans? What do you think happened? Now, when I think about this, Native Americans, they used to have all of this land where they could hunt, they could plant, they could grow things. I think that creating these railroads really took away land from the Native Americans. I think it impacted their hunting, and I think it impacted them growing things. I think it impacted their whole entire way of life, because if you take 10,000 miles, however many miles, 500 miles even, and you put all these railroads in it and you populate it, those Native Americans can't go hunting in that area anymore because there's nothing there. There's towns and cities and railroads, and there's too many people. There's not going to be the buffalo that they need to hunt. There's not going to be the things that they need there. So I want you to really think about how this has impacted our Native Americans. Is it a good thing for the Native Americans? Is it a bad thing? For us, it was great. For Texans, it was great. We had these railroads, we have jobs, we have people, we've got farmers, we have all of these things that are going good for us. Our economy is back up. But on the flip side, was it a good thing for Native Americans or was it a bad thing for Native Americans? Picture yourself as a Native American. Would you have liked somebody coming in and taking over all your land? Would you have liked somebody changing your way of life? And I mean, I don't know off the top of my head, but did they ask? Did they check on the Native Americans and make sure they were okay? Did they get clearance with them, or did they just do whatever they want and take whatever they want? So you are going to do, if you are in another homeroom, you're going to do a journal entry and you're going to tell me, I want you to predict if railroads are being made throughout Texas, how do you think it is affecting the Native Americans? You're making a prediction. Now, I haven't really taught you much of anything. I'm going to teach more tomorrow on Native Americans, but I want you to make a prediction. Is it affecting them for the good, for the bad? And why do you think that? For my homeroom, you're going to do another flip grid. You're going to tell me, okay, is this affecting the Native Americans? Is it for the good or for the bad? And tell me why you think that. Make a prediction. When you're done, take a picture and turn it in. For my kids, just turn in your video, and then you are done for the day. And tomorrow we're going to talk about Native Americans and the buffalo. All right.